Forget gurus. Forget anyone claiming to be an online business expert without going through the challenges of entrepreneurship themselves. The Real Money, Real Business podcast is here to prove the best insights in online business comes from your fellow online business builders. We dig into stories of entrepreneurs selling their business on the Empire Flippers marketplace so that you can learn how they made their business profitable, how they overcame obstacles, and what lessons they learned in their online journey. If you want to take your business and your knowledge to the next level, you've come to the right podcast. Let's get started.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Real Money, Real Business podcast. We record these interviews so potential buyers have more information about the seller and the business to help them make a buying decision further down the road. Before we dive in, let's go over a very brief summary of the business on sale today. Today's listing is a 2-app SaaS business created in November 2018 in the business niche. The average monthly revenue for the business is $25,458, and it makes an average of $18,614 per month in net profit. The assets included in the sale are 2 domains and all of the site's contents and files, 2 separate email lists, social media accounts, SOPs, and supplier contracts and relationships. For everyone listening, you can visit empireflippers.com/marketplace and search for listing 54692 to learn more about the business. Or you can unlock this listing to start your due diligence if you're interested in purchasing this asset. So that's a very brief overview of the business for sale today. And I've got the seller with me today, so let's hear from them. Tristan, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Hey, Vinny, I'm good, thanks. Thanks a lot for having me on.
That was our absolute pleasure. Share with me what your background is in building or running online businesses. Is this your first foray into the online business world? Or have you been here for a while?
Yeah, no worries. So for the past 8 years, I've been mainly focused on building and running my own e-commerce businesses on Shopify, and more recently shifted my focus into building a SaaS business. So I actually started my first Shopify store back in 2014 while I was at university. It was a herbal tea Shopify store. It didn't end up doing that well, but it did give me a ton of experience and basically allowed me to build a couple of 7-figure Shopify stores, which I'm running today. I'd say I have a lot of experience being in the trenches of e-commerce, and more recently I've used some of that experience to build a SaaS business. And that SaaS business includes 2 Shopify apps, which help store owners generate more sales and bigger average order values for their Shopify stores. And yeah, those are the 2 apps I've listed on Empire Flippers for sale.
That sounds great. Yeah, so it definitely sounds like you said you've been in the trenches for quite a while, and I really love what you were saying there about you started off that herbal tea Shopify business. It maybe didn't give you quite the ROI you were hoping for, wasn't scaling as much as you wanted it to, but hey, growing pains and part of the territory of being an entrepreneur. So it sounds like you've done a few different projects. How did you come up with the idea to start this business with these 2 apps in particular?
Yeah, so the first Shopify app that we launched in 2018, the way I got the idea for that was I was running a Shopify store at the time where I was offering a buy now, pay later service option at the checkout. It's called Afterpay. And I went onto the Shopify app store and I was looking for an upsell app that could do 2 things. So the first thing that I needed the upsell app to do was it first needed to work with Afterpay in the native Shopify checkout. And the second was that I actually wanted to show multiple upsells on the order confirmation page. And I wanted those upsells to be really conversion focused with fast load times, big call to action buttons. So when I was searching the Shopify App Store, I actually couldn't find any Shopify apps that did those 2 things. And I had a friend at the time who was a developer, and he was mainly doing contract work for clients. So yeah, I just hit him up and asked him if he could build this app idea that I had so I could use it on my own Shopify store internally. And then I told him that if it works well, we could launch it publicly and then split the profits. So yeah, after about a couple of months, he basically came back to me, put together an MVP, and then I plugged it into my Shopify app store and switched it on. And off the bat, I was getting a 10% take rate on my upsells, which is really good. And it worked perfectly with Afterpay as well and any other buy now, pay later service. So yeah, we decided to launch that app publicly and it got some pretty good traction off the launch. So yeah, that's how I got the idea for the first app. And that currently makes up about 85% of the revenue in the business. So the other 15% of revenue comes from a second Shopify app that we launched in 2020. It does a bit of a similar function to what the first app does, but we just decided to launch that app separately as a totally separate app just to diversify the revenue and risk across multiple apps, just instead of putting all our eggs into one basket.
Tristan, yeah, that absolutely makes sense. So it sounds like because you're in the ecosystem, the Shopify ecosystem, you spotted a need that sort of needed meeting there, and then you sort of, just took proactive steps to fulfill that need yourself by creating the solution. How does the business generate revenue?
Yeah, so all of our revenue comes from recurring subscriptions. So the first app has multiple subscription tiers, and that's based on the amount of orders a Shopify store is doing. We also offer like monthly and annual payment plans with that first app. For the second app, there's only one subscription tier, regardless of how many orders the Shopify store is doing. And on that app, we only offer monthly plans.
Gotcha. You managed to build a business up to, a considerable size. Why are you selling the business right now instead of staying with it and growing it?
Yes, this is my first SaaS business, and my goal was never really to turn this business into something huge. It was more of a learning experience just for me to understand how to build and manage a team of developers, since I've come from a totally different background, which is e-commerce. So now with that team, we're actually in the process of building a new SaaS application that doesn't run on Shopify and is more geared towards a different market. It's more geared towards online marketers as opposed to e-commerce store owners. And we're also targeting a more enterprise level client. So that app that we're building now, it's a lot more sophisticated, requires more time, more resources, and needs a bigger team. So I've decided to take a bit of a risk and sell our existing Shopify app business so we can use the funds from the sale of the business to bootstrap the new app that we're building and hopefully get some traction in a new market.
Gotcha. Makes sense. I just want to ask you about your experience now. As you were building this business, was there anything that you learned from scaling this business in particular that you just felt really worked for you?
Yeah, so I guess one of the things that just works for me, and I wish we implemented sooner, is having an affiliate program with a decent payout to attract new affiliate signups. So right now, about 28% of our revenue is generated through affiliates. And the most effective kind of affiliate that we've found, instructors of online e-commerce courses. So we've got a bunch of affiliates for our apps who are course instructors, and in their courses, they teach people how to build e-commerce stores, and they have videos about how to set up and use our apps. So we get a stream of traffic of signups from them on autopilot, basically, which is great. And yeah, we really wished we knew that sooner.
That's great. Was there any software tools that helped you when you were growing or scaling this business?
Yeah, so when we initially launched, I'd say most of the traction came from Shopify communities, and those communities we sort of found in Facebook groups that were related to e-commerce, Shopify, and dropshipping. So we did do some posts in those groups that really helped us start to get some traction. So yeah, those Shopify communities. And then a really good tool that I recommend anyone running a SaaS business to keep track of your monthly recurring revenue and also your churn is Baremetrics. And yeah, so each month we'd look at our Baremetrics dashboard and try and get the churn lower, try to increase MRR. So I'd definitely say that helped us along the way.
Makes sense. Throughout your journey as an entrepreneur, especially in the Shopify, ecosystem, were there any resources that just really helped you skill up and just learn more about SaaS businesses or Shopify? I mean, you mentioned there about joining certain communities. Are there anything else that you'd recommend our listeners to check out?
A lot of the learnings of my experience really came from being in the trenches those past 8 years. I mean, there wasn't really one hack or one tool I sort of used. It was more just, based on my own personal experience of running e-commerce stores and having a background in direct response and conversion focused apps. So I guess the best advice I could give is jump in there and actually put in the work and just do it yourself.
For sure. You were sharing just now about what helped you, and just what really worked for you. Was there anything that wasn't giving you the ROI you were hoping for? Just anything that didn't really work for you that you found?
Yeah, so I guess one of the things that didn't work at all for us, which I was hoping would for us, was running cold traffic or prospecting ads off Facebook. So basically, for my e-commerce businesses that I've run in the past, they all rely heavily on paid traffic, especially cold traffic ads off Facebook. We tried doing that for our SaaS business, but unfortunately, we could never get cold traffic profitable. So we couldn't scale profitably using ad platforms as I'm used to. We could run a little bit of remarketing ads on Facebook, but yeah, we've never been able to get cold traffic to work. We've actually ran some Facebook ads a while ago to cold traffic that were breaking even, but yeah, never been really able to hit those cold ads profitably and scale through that medium.
Makes sense. Since you were mentioning about traffic and stuff like that, what do you currently do in terms of marketing?
Yeah, so not much, to be honest. The app kind of runs itself. A lot of the signups are from organic traffic. So that's from people posting in Facebook groups. There's a lot of word of mouth traffic, and there's a lot of referral traffic that comes from YouTube like just people who have posted on YouTube about our app organically. In terms of like the stuff we do actively for marketing, we have a marketing assistant who does outreach to popular YouTube influencers who have channels about e-commerce and Shopify. We actually started doing that in March this year, and that's been working pretty well. But prior to March, basically all the signups have really come from word of mouth. And again, like a lot of our revenue is generated from affiliates. So affiliates getting signups kind of creates a flywheel and it just helps with that organic traffic.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. If you were to stay with the business, what are some of the ways that you'd think about trying to expand it?
Yeah, so I think there's like two different ways that we would keep trying to expand the business. And like one is from a marketing perspective and the other is from a development perspective. And I think if you combine those two things, that's where the biggest long-term growth would happen. But from a marketing perspective, I guess one of the methods that we've seen success in, as I just mentioned before, is reaching out to YouTube influencers for sponsored posts. So I definitely continue to do that, but also look for influencers on other platforms, like especially owners of e-commerce and Facebook Shopify groups, also e-commerce course instructors. I know Udemy has like a huge list for e-commerce course owners, which we've never reached out to. And there's also a bunch of new and upcoming TikTok and Twitter e-commerce influencers, which we haven't reached out to at all as well, which I definitely pursue. On top of that, our website is just basically a one-page website. It doesn't have a blog or anything. We have no blog posts. So there's definitely an opportunity there to start a blog post and start generating some organic traffic through like educational blog posts, for example. Another opportunity that we haven't explored at all is partnering with other Shopify apps and doing any kind of like cross-promotion, like email blasts. So yeah, I think those would be the biggest areas for growth in terms of marketing. And then from a development perspective, the biggest request we get from our users is to release a one-click upsell feature. And the reason why we haven't been able to release that feature is for a while, Shopify hasn't allowed certain apps to access the Shopify API component that allows us to use the one-click upsell feature. But they recently have just opened it up. And we haven't started to build this yet. So there's a huge opportunity there for the new owner to come in, build that one-click upsell feature, which shouldn't take too much time or work. And we'd see that really decrease churn and allow for much longer-term growth.
That's great. Definitely sounds like there's lots of avenues for growth there. What would you say are some of the biggest risks with the business that a buyer should be aware of?
Yeah, so I mean, the biggest risk, in my opinion, is that the fact that it's built on Shopify, the app's always going to be at the mercy of the Shopify platform. And we've seen in the past that when Shopify release new features, they usually only release those features to a select group of Shopify apps, like as a pilot. So there is the risk that if Shopify open up their API more, then other apps can sometimes have a head start on building new features. So yeah, the risk that I see is inherent in the fact that it's a Shopify app.
Gotcha. Okay. Can you just describe to me what you and co-founder as well, what's the type of work that you do to maintain the business on like a day-to-day or even a weekly basis?
Like right now, there's very little work that goes into the app anymore. So we've got a developer on our team who just basically maintains the app, and he spends about 5 hours per week. And that work is just basically responding to technical support tickets. And yeah, that's literally about it for the developer. And then we also have a customer support rep who also does some marketing work as well. So that customer support rep spends about 12 hours per week on support, and she does about 8 hours per week on outreach. And that's just outreaching to popular YouTube influencers who have e-commerce Shopify YouTube channels.
Gotcha. Are both of those hired staff or contract? Will they be continuing with the business after the sale?
Yeah, so that developer, he is part of our company. So he's an internal developer that we have, and that won't come with the sale. That customer support rep, yeah, will definitely come with the sale, and she knows that we're selling the business and she's willing to work with a new owner.
Great to hear. Can you just describe to me what would you recommend are some of the skills or requirements for someone who's interested in acquiring this business and they might not be familiar with the niche or the SaaS business model?
Yeah, so I'd say the buyer definitely should have a basic understanding of e-commerce, and especially how Shopify works. I'd also say that you definitely need to put a developer on the app just for maintenance. Although the maintenance is very small, like max 5 hours a week, there should still be someone there to answer those technical support queries that come up.
That's great to know, yeah. Last few questions then from me here. How much support are you offering buyers?
Yeah, so we're happy to offer the buyer 90 days of support, and we're happy to give the buyer as much support as they need through Skype calls. And if the buyer does decide to hire a new developer, we're happy to jump on as many Skype calls as needed to train that developer. And yeah, we'll be there for 90-day support. No questions asked. We'll always be there to help out.
Great to hear. Are you willing to commit to a non-compete?
Yes, 100%.
That's great to hear. Are you open to something like an earn-out?
Yeah, I mean, I prefer a cash up front deal, but I'd still be open to an earn-out or any other types of deal structuring as long as it makes sense for us as well as the buyer.
Okay. Last question really from me here, Tristan. If you put yourself in the shoes of a buyer, why would you say that this is a business worth buying?
Yeah, so I'd firstly say there's very low maintenance required. I mean, we've run the app for a long time and like all the bugs are ironed out. And yeah, I mean, the maintenance is just basically 5 hours a day from a developer. In regards to the profit margins, you probably already know that they're very, very good. And then on top of that, we have a bunch of unexplored marketing channels that we just haven't had the time or resources to explore properly. I mean, the main app is still getting 15 to 25 signups per day organically. And we basically aren't doing any marketing activities except for that small bit of YouTube influencer outreach that I've mentioned before. So there's a huge amount of opportunities there to expand the marketing. And lastly, that opportunity I talked about to list on the main app store on Shopify, you'll get a bunch of organic signups for that. And then on top of that, you can use Shopify's built-in PPC function as well to get more paid signups from the App Store. So yeah, I'd say there's a huge amount of marketing channels available to the buyer.
Great. Is there anything you'd like to share that you think I might have missed?
Not really. I think we've covered all the stuff. I think it's all good.
Great stuff. Well, Tristan, thank you so much for joining me on today's podcast and really looking forward to seeing your business get picked up by the right buyer.
No worries, Vinny. Appreciate coming. Thanks, man. Have a good one.
All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. To learn more and see if this listing has already been sold, head over to empireflippers.com/marketplace and search for listing number 54692. If you're watching this on YouTube, click the link in the description to go straight to the listing. And once you've unlocked the listing, you'll be given everything you need to know about this business. So until next time, enjoy your digital journey.